So, welcome to Coffee with Common Cause. I'm going to encourage you put your name, where you're from, into the chat. I'm really glad that you all are here. Mia, if you'll move to the agenda, I'll go through all the things we're going to talk about. Welcome all, of course. We're going to talk first about elections. So it's pretty simple. We'll talk about elections. And then we have two special guests. So Perry Sabity, who is the former director of the Ohio Office of Budget Management, and she's currently a fellow at the National Academy of Public Administration. She's going to walk us through a little bit of a conundrum about a mysterious $100 million energy fund, AEP, and JobsOhio. Then we're going to hear from Jay Young. Now, Jay is with Common Cause. He is Common Cause's Senior Policy Director, and his focus is on civil rights and civil liberties. And then we're going to talk about as we're going through all of this, all the different ways that we can take action. So I'm just really glad to see you. I'm glad you're here.
Catherine, would you like to introduce Dylan?
Oh, great. Oh, Dylan, I'm so glad you're here. So, Dylan Sellers is our new member of Common Cause Ohio. He is the election protection organizer. He comes to us from the Fair Elections Center Campus Vote Project. He was the national director of HBCUs. And Dylan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I typically introduce myself as somebody's son, somebody's brother, and Charmaine's husband. I hail from Cleveland, Ohio, born and bred in the great state of Cuyahoga County,
Mhm.
and yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you all for this very pivotal moment in our state's history.
Awesome. So nice to have you here.
And Dylan is in Cleveland, which, Ohio is a really large state and it's hard to organize people from all over. And so we were just really pleased to have some help with election protection, but also to have, somebody who's in Cleveland, in community there. And so a great big welcome to Dylan. And with that,
I'm just trying to mute a couple of folks. Very good. Alrighty, and moving right along.
So I thought maybe the best way to start the election conversation has to do with some of the election threats and some recent wins. So there have been some criminal investigations that were surprising. So first had to do with in Georgia with the Franklin County Board of Election, they're being raided to get all of their election 2020 materials. Um, and then, when we also think of a kind of a misuse of FBI resources, just recently, voter registration organization, the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, was raided. And, I think it's important when we're in this time period to think about we need to really push back on, authoritarian threats and tactics, and one of the best ways that we can do that is participating in getting folks registered, participating in educating people, rallies, and all sorts of other ways. And so I did want to highlight, a couple things that I thought were problematic. So one had to do the Antifa summit that was this month. As opposed to, counterterrorism focusing on extremism from the far right, they're having an Antifa summit. Also, CISA, had a major cut in funding. Now,
Catherine, can you explain what CISA is?
okay, so basically, it's the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and there's a reason I'm somebody who loathes acronyms, but I do use CISA just because it's such a mouthful. But they spend a lot of time really focused on the election threats that have nothing to do with, countering terrorism or on the grounds. They're worried about the technological deficits. They spend a lot of time focusing on, all right, how do we protect the critical infrastructure that is, in fact, our elections? And so, yes, we know that when we go to vote, it's not connected to the internet. But when we think about the database, for example, that the Secretary of State has, it is coming from 88 different counties. And it's a database that, of course, goes through the internet. It's on a cloud. It needs to be protected. And then when you also think about the kinds of attacks that could happen to bring down infrastructure, that's what they focus on.
And could I just say that these kinds of cuts that, most Americans are never going to hear about and are never going to think about and don't know what the agency does anyway. Those are the kinds of things, those are the kind of um, surreptitious and insidious ways that the federal government is seeking to undermine elections. It's very worrying.
And then I also think, when we think about what's going on with, DOJ saying, okay, we're going to set up a fund for the people who tried to overthrow the election. This is clearly a threat. It has been met both by the judge, by a federal judge and also through Congress. One of the things that is not clear is if it's completely over. Todd Blanche, who we'll talk about later, said yes, this fund is not going to happen, but certainly the President of the United States has not. Um, and then, just this week, the U.S. District Judge blocked the use of basically the federal database to check citizenship. And I think that one of the things that is so important as a moment is that, it's not like the courts are going to save us, but they are another way where they really do push back. And then, I also wanted to highlight, the implement, pushing back on proof of citizenship is all so important. And so I noticed in the chat there was a real focus on like how do we reframe and talk about empathy and how do we have empathy for one another. And so as we're going through all of the different ways to take action, these are different ways to care. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Chuck for highlighting just the need to really disrupt. Empathy is a disruptor and the soul of democracy. And so thank you for that comment. I really appreciate it.
Catherine, could you and Kelly talk for a second about so when we're talking about the blocking of the use of the federal database on citizenship, how does that interplay with the fact that Frank LaRose shared our database and the fact that, after uh, 293, the county boards of elections have to check their voter registration rolls against the SAVE federal database. Does that affect Ohio directly?
Not necessarily. And one of the things that I do think that we should do is we should ask when we get to Jay's portion, this is a really good question to ask him because he's paying really close attention to these federal lawsuits. It's interesting. Ohio is is one of a handful of states that actually chose to give our information. And so, when we think about basically just turning over our voter rolls with, and there are others. So in, our neighbor Indiana, there are states, that you can imagine that just said, oh yeah, of course we'll hand this over. And Frank LaRose did in fact hand it over. Common Cause does have a lawsuit right now, about about privacy. Like, handing it over to one entity doesn't mean it should go to all entities in the federal government. And I encourage us, to ask Jay a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm curious if that means that we can't, if we use that database, we can't use it to purge voters or, yeah, we can, ask Jay.
So I think the way to think about this is that it does impact us as potentially stopping it. I This is what I worry about. It's not the final say.
Yeah,
And so we will find out what this exactly means. I appreciate James is adding about a violation of our privacy and the
yeah.
Privacy Act.
All right. And Kelly.
Kelly is dealing with a fire drill right now. And so because of that, why don't I go ahead
I'm
and
here.
tell you,
She's
oh
here.
yay,
Yeah.
Kelly, you're
Yeah.
here. Great.
Yeah.
I am here. Yes, that was very strange, but I'm here. Um, Thanks. And so, since the election bills to work toward documenting proof of citizenship at a national level have not moved forward in Congress, Trump has continued to issue executive orders, which seem bananas to many of us, but are having direct impacts on government agencies that are rulemaking and proposing changes to align with the order that was issued. So the recent executive order in March this year actually was working to restrict vote by mail. And so what we have seen earlier this month is the U.S. Postal Service publish a new proposed rule, which includes a whole host of things, but fundamentally would create a new federal ballot mail portal system through the post office. Obviously states work in conjunction with the post office already for mail ballots, but this would take it to a new level where the federal government would be restricting who receives a ballot based on whether or not they are on a system that they approve. And so complicated, strange rulemaking, but rulemaking nonetheless. These states that would not offer to send their lists to the Postal Service for this effort would not be able to mail those ballots. And so it's in effect a way to attempt a federal agency to block the accepting or delivering of ballots based on their criteria. So it's criteria. So it's another complicated piece working around the fringe of, restricting access to the ballot. The next slide, please. The hopeful news is that it's on everyone's radar. I can put this and that in resources. We have background and talking points. So if you're interested in seeing a public comment, you're more than welcome to do that. Common Cause also has an action. But the background and talking points link just helps you understand the situation a little bit more or answer any question. If you're an organizational leader, there's a public comment template that you can use to submit on behalf of your organization. If you're part of a national organization, we would ask you to check with your national organization first because they likely have something that they're at the national teams level working to submit. But if you're an individual and you're interested in sending a comment, there is an email address in the links, but you can also take the Common Cause action to just create a simple couple sentences of who you are, the state you vote in, and how you rely on your mail vote by mail opportunities. If you've used it in the past, if you're perhaps a rural voter or you travel for work or whatever the case may be, looking for a lot of public sentiment by the deadline of July 2nd. So this is the latest attack. Our groups continue to push back on this, and then also litigate at so many different levels. So we appreciate your help if you're able to support that.
Thank you. Thank you. So July 2nd is the deadline. So get on it. It's happening soon. Okay, so that was the federal level. So on, the folks at the General Assembly, the State House have gone home for the summer and for election season. We hope they don't come back next week but they were very, very busy right before they went away and they passed a whole bunch of things. And one of the things they passed was this SJR 10, Senate Joint Resolution 10, which was a weird, weird little thing that, it seeks to put a constitutional amendment, an amendment in the Ohio Constitution requiring photo ID. Now we already have a law that says there's photo ID, so it's 100% unnecessary, duplicative. And we just have this little timeline here to just show you how crazily intertwined the politics and this attempt to get this issue on the ballot because it's a constitutional amendment, it has to be on the ballot. So it started out with Ramaswamy writing an op-ed in the Inquirer calling for voter ID to be in the Ohio Constitution. I'm sure this is keeping him up at night. I'm sure this is what he's thinking about as he travels around to, various places on his corporate jet or his private jet. Right after that, the next day, a bill was introduced to put this on the ballot, essentially, and in the Senate, and then in the House, and then by June 10th, it was passed. So it is going to be on the ballot. We're going to have on the ballot an issue saying, yes or no, do you think that voter ID should be required in Ohio and be part of our Constitution for voters to vote on? And the thing about this is, it's a little bit of a when did you stop beating your wife kind of question. It's a question that no matter where people are in the political spectrum, people tend in general overwhelmingly to support voter ID. Now, us voter advocates, we actually know that it's a little more complicated than that. Ohio had a great system before where if you didn't have your ID with you, you could use a bank statement or a utility statement or a check, or there were a lot of things that you could use, and that worked absolutely fine. And in fact, in most elections in the history of this country, there was an ID requirement at all. People just came in and signed, and we still have matching signatures and all of that stuff. But you're not going to win that at the ballot, and you're not going to, it's kind of a trap to think that we would come out and start advocating against voter ID because people will think, oh, well, they're just encouraging fraud. So going to be on the ballot, and the question is why? And, it is pretty obvious that it's just about trying to encourage more people to come and vote in November who maybe aren't that thrilled about Vivek Ramaswamy, but this is a way to kind of encourage them to go to the polls. Now, one issue with this bill, this resolution that ended up on the ballot, was that the people who were on the far right didn't think it was strong enough because it didn't include a requirement for photo ID for when you voted by mail. And so there were people advocating against it, saying this isn't good enough. We need to amend it to make sure that it includes a requirement to have photo ID even when you vote by mail. Because right now that is, you can vote, you can register with just the last four of your social, and you can vote by mail. If when you vote in person, you're going to have to show that unexpired ID or that passport or that military or veterans ID. But if you don't have those, let's say you're elderly and you're not driving anymore and you don't really want to go and renew a driver's license that you're not using, you can use your last four to vote by mail. And that was not good enough for, a pretty large segment of people. And so they were advocating to change it. So in order to kind of pacify them, there was an attempt to change House Bill 472. And it's actually really kind of sad, even though this is a victory for us, that this bill was, actually vetoed last night by Governor Mike DeWine. 472 started out as a non-controversial, bipartisan, really good-hearted bill that would help people who were unhoused to get government ID, even, without an address. And it passed 91-1 in the House. So this was an uncontroversial bill just to help people. Do you know how hard it is when you don't have ID and you're trying to, find somewhere to live or get a job or do any of the things that you have to do? And so it was just to help them. And then it was completely hijacked and turned into a bill to require voter ID, a physical copy of your voter ID to be photocopied and mailed when you applied to vote by mail, or to go onto this complicated online portal and show your face and your ID and make sure they match. So even though the Board of Election, the Ohio Association of Elections officials, and even Frank LaRose kind of spoke out against this bill. It did pass and it went to Mike DeWine, but luckily, and thanks to all of you, because I know a lot of people on this call, I'm sure, called or emailed Mike DeWine. He did veto it last night, and we will send you in our follow-up a link to his statement. It is linked in the slides as well. It's a really good statement because it really goes through why this bill would not have made us safer. It would not have increased our security, but it would have made it more difficult for a lot of voters to vote by mail. So we applaud Mike DeWine for vetoing this bill. He vetoed one other, which was about submetering. Maybe Parry will tell us about that later, mention it. So thank you, Mike DeWine. I'm sorry that this also meant that the free ID for folks who are unhoused got vetoed as well, and so they will have to start again. But first of all, just a round of applause for everybody who sent in a comment. I know a lot of you did. We really appreciate it, and we don't get a lot of wins, so let's celebrate this win, and we appreciate everything that everybody did. And now, Dylan, more ways to win, more ways to take action and win.
Hello, 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 everyone. And yes, I think that, uh, being in the kind of work that we're in the state that we're in, we don't get as many wins. And so I know you're hearing the team say, like, celebrate the win, celebrate the win. You always need to celebrate your wins. It keeps you fueled for the future. And in that same vein, let's talk about how we capitalize on that kind of momentum. We want to do a few things to take action that will help us around election protection. The first thing that you want to do is voter registration look up throughout the year, right? I check my voter registration multiple times a year, right? I have been voting since I was 18 in this state. That has not changed, and I still check it multiple times a year. Okay. So encourage your friends and family to do voter lookup or voteohio.com to make sure that their registration is correct. Also, we need to recruit some poll workers. This is probably one of the most direct things that you can do to impact and to be involved is to recruit some poll workers, right? And these are different than poll monitors, friends. This is a poll worker is somebody who's going to be there, who's going to administer our elections, and this is an opportunity for young folk and our more seasoned citizens to really be involved in the election process. It's a big deal, and it's something that you can do from home. You can send text messages. You click that link and help us recruit some poll workers. And finally, sign up to protectthevote.net to join our voter support network, right? And this is where you're going to get all of the information that I just gave you here, some more emails and things like that from the team here in Ohio, just so you stay up to date on what needs to happen, how you can be involved, and when we have these wins, our celebration emails, right? And so we want you to be involved and informed on that. And I think we have one more big thing that's coming up. And I think it's on the next slide. Boom, there it is. This is the exciting thing. We are going to have an election protection summit. It is our third annual one. This is going to be in conjunction with our coalition, the Ohio Voting Rights Coalition. And that is the date, my friends. Saturday, September 19th. Circle it on your calendars. Bring a friend, bring two, and let's get registered. It is going to be a great event to kind of get us started and get us ready for the fall, get us ready for the election in November. So circle your calendars. Saturday, September 19th. It's going to be in Columbus. Come one, come all. Thank you, Kelly. That was a great assist. I really appreciate that. It's right there in the chat. And so, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mia. Thanks for listening to me for a little bit.
Yay. Yeah, that poster is wrong. Sorry, sorry, sorry. We had it on the 12th and we changed it. Thank you to Jeremy who pointed that out in the chat. Our bad. We will change it. But it is the 19th. So listen to what Dylan says. Don't look at the calendar. Um, all right. Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce Perry.
So I'm very pleased that Perry is joining us. She and Janine Midgen Ostrander had an op-ed last week that I just thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect for a coffee with Common Cause. Many of you will know Janine. She often joins us to talk about utility issues. And so I'm just really pleased to introduce Perry Sabity. I said at the beginning that she had this long history in Ohio that, in fact, if you think back to the Strickland administration, she was the director of the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. And with that, Perry, we'd love to hear from you.
And I'm hoping that she is here, but she is not here. I'm looking
So
in
I'm
the,
gonna, I may rely a little bit on Sandy Tice. Sandy, is that okay with you?
Sure. Of course,
Okay.
I wanted to hear from Perry, but that's okay.
Well, and it may
I
be,
can I can
oh,
call her. We can skip to Jay, who is here, and I can call Perry.
all right, we'll see what's going on there. And then what we'll do is we'll move to Jay's slide.
There we go.
And Jay is here. So this is Jay Young. You'll remember that he's with with Common Cause, and his focus is on civil rights and civil liberties. And Jay, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with Todd Blanche and why we should oppose him for Attorney General?
But first, I just want to say thank you so much for like having me here. Y'all are like, I don't think you guys fully grasp how many people are sort of in love with y'all from in Common Cause around the country. Like hopping on a call first thing in the morning, there's 70 of you on the call. You guys have been amazing as long as I've been working at Common Cause, you still are. So I'm glad to join you for coffee. So again, my name's Jay Young. I'm the Senior Policy Director for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. That means I oversee all of the stuff that we've been pushing back against over this last year and a half that has felt like a lifetime. Um, the big challenge is that virtually everything that we have seen over the last year, whether it's immigration, whether it's a slush fund and immunity for the president for any past or future dealings, whether it's just bad executive orders, all of the things, the Department of Justice um, sort of comes back to that. When the administration first came into office, Pam Bondi was the Attorney General. And quite frankly, she did all of the things that we're not fond of Todd Blanche doing now. The difference is she wasn't as effective. She didn't manage to get indictments against as many of the president's political enemies. She didn't manage to say on enough occasions how much she was willing to turn over sort of the independent ethical responsibilities that are expected of an attorney general again to satisfy the political whims of the president. And so, actually, just before and kind of frustratingly, we had decided to launch a campaign around just what it meant to be an attorney general that puts the public interest before the concerns of any individual, president or otherwise. Unfortunately, I launched the campaign, with a whole bunch of folks sort of helping out on that, and like 3 days later, Todd Blanche is nominated. He's been the acting attorney general, if you don't know who he is, but he's been much more than that. He's been Donald Trump's personal attorney for years. He is one of the gentlemen who sat on his criminal team. He was involved in the sexual assault charges. He's been the president's fixer for over a decade. And he is exactly the kind of guy who, as I said, we're focused on people who are willing to put their personal interests above or sort of below, excuse me, their ethical obligations to the people and to the rule of law. I'm an attorney myself, and the concerns of my client are always paramount for me. But I'm also an officer of the court, and this guy is interviewing right now to be the top officer of the court, if you would. Um, so, I'm not going to go through all of the things. We would be here all day. I talk a lot, so you would get really sick of me if I actually cataloged all of the things. But I think the key things that I wanted to pop in here, and hope that I can use a little bit of your muscle, because we have the opportunity to stop this. This is a very winnable fight. And we don't get a lot of wins, as I think somebody said in sort of the recent months on the big things. We get a lot of wins on sort of individual things. We have a lot that we can be proud of. But this is the sort of thing where we can really take a stand. And you guys are not just well organized and effective, but you actually happen to have one of the people sitting at the top of our target list right there in Ohio, Senator Houston. So the best thing, I will fall to my hands and knees and ask you if you could take a moment, just jot down one of these phone numbers on this slide for Senator Houston, and I really only need you to tell him two things. The senator is one of a couple of Republicans who bravely voted to ban the use of this slush fund. If you remember, the president sued the IRS in a case wasn't even real. You can't really, I mean, he controls the IRS. You can't really sue yourself. And before the court could issue a bad ruling suggesting you can't do this, this isn't a real case. Um, Houston, excuse me, Blanche jumped in, said, "Don't worry, I'll save you." Created this $1.8 billion slush fund that was going to be potentially used by everybody from January Sixers to some of his other billionaire cronies, or frankly, it could have ended up in the president's wallet himself. Um, Senator Houston doesn't like it. I don't like it. My guess is y'all don't like it. So all I need you to do is reach out to Senator Houston using any one of these forms of contact. We've only got 3 weeks to get this done, to stop this confirmation. So there's a limited window of opportunity here. But the more contacts, the better. So write, send a carrier pigeon, smoke signals, anything to let this guy know that Todd Blanche is not the sort of person that we want as the people's attorney. He's not the kind of person that is the number one, should be the number one law enforcement officer in this country. And again, he's willing to hand over or bless handing over taxpayer money to the president to suit his political whims. So that's my spiel. Again, I'm thrilled to be here. I've been working at Common Cause for over a decade now. I was the executive director in Illinois for most of that time. And I was, sort of staring over it with envy at Catherine and everything that she and all of y'all have been doing over these years to fight slay some pretty big dragons. So again, just glad to be here, and really hope that you can give us a hand in this because we're counting on you guys to help us get this done. So appreciate you.
Well, Jay, at the beginning, we had some discussions about some of the things that are happening with voting.
Oh,
And
Catherine,
oh,
before
yes.
we get to that, I just wanted to, sorry, I was muted there for a second. I just wanted to say for anyone who's feeling skeptical about Husted, remember what Jay said, that he did vote against this fund. And also remember that Bernie Moreno just had an op-ed in the New York Times with Elizabeth Warren calling to end the cap on Social Security. So we're seeing these cracks from these Republican senators kind of trying to break away from the president a little bit. And this is like a perfect opportunity for us to widen that crack. And I feel like you guys can really do it. And the two things, Jay, sorry, remind me, the two things, if they call and they're just going to say the tiniest thing, the two things that they should say are,
Two things that they should say are that he is not independent,
he's not independent.
that he is the guy who created the slush fund.
He created the slush fund, which he
And
said is against.
exactly. I mean, you're not asking, I agree. There's a lot of reasons to be skeptical about Senator Husted, but we're only asking him to do a thing he's already done.
That's
Um,
right.
so yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt, Catherine, but yeah, and Pat, back to you.
Well, and it's funny because I shouldn't have immediately jumped off to voting, because this is incredibly important. We've been popping in the phone numbers and the petitions into the chat. One of the things that always makes me feel depressed is sitting there and thinking about all these things. But when I make a phone call, when I sign a petition, when I go to an event, these are ways that we can really push back and come together. And I do think, it can be hard to see, the light at the end of the tunnel. But this is clearly a moment where we can make a difference, and I really encourage us all to oppose Todd Blanche as AG. This is not the right person for this job. Um, and then if you are ready to transition to voting things. So Jay, one of the things that we were really interested in are kind of the recent decisions that have to do with the use of the database, the use of documentary proof of citizenship. If you could just talk a little bit more about that. I kind of glossed over it. So if you could give a little bit more information, we would be really grateful.
So let me just make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you talking about the same database in particular, or just sort of the how data is being used in general?
I I had a question
Mhm.
because our Ohio boards of elections now are required to run their voter registration rolls against the SAVE database.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if the recent ruling saying that you can't purge people based on using that database, if that affects our boards of elections and what they can and can't do. I mean, it's confusing.
No, it is absolutely confusing, and we are on brand new ground because, this is not the sort of thing that has happened before, and for good reason. The way our system of government works is each state administers its own elections. Their data they use for whatever purposes they need to run those elections. And as I'm a resident in Illinois. When I gave signed up to register to vote in Illinois, the data that I gave them, was given for those purposes. Um, it wasn't given for use to like, be handed over and applied in another database. And if I knew that was going to happen, I might have done things differently. I might have chosen not to register to vote at all, because I just got married and my name changed, and I don't want to. I mean, my wife had like had two middle names, and it was crazy on her driver's license. And so for a while, she was Mila Bearfield for most of her. She's still Milo Bearfield. And she would have had to provide that kind of additional information. And maybe if she didn't have access to all those documents, she wouldn't have done it. So like there are lots of reasons why this national database that is being created is bad for America, but also bad for individual voters. It's potentially going to disenfranchise a whole bunch of folks. I always like to tell the story when I was in the Illinois director about our Secretary of State, who was born in the front room of his grandmother's house. He didn't have a birth certificate, never did. So he couldn't. The guy who was supposed to be administering Illinois elections wouldn't be able to vote in Ohio, for example. And that's the sort of craziness that we're dealing with. It's made compounded even more because they're taking all of this data and aggregating it into this system that we already know produces a whole bunch of errors. So there's a lot of challenges, not just with the idea behind the system. The system itself has been proven not to work.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, because of the way that the government has tried to enforce this by going out and suing a bunch of states, excuse me, and then groups like Common Cause and others are jumping into these fights and frankly winning. We've got a perfect 9-0 record, blocking uh, in those states that have pushed back. I'm fortunate. I live in
Hmm.
Illinois. We didn't hand it over, and we were able to win in federal court against the Trump administration. But I understand that I live in opposite land from you. I get that.
Hmm.
There was just a ruling about this Dave Act. You are correct, and it is you are right to be confused because on the one hand, any court has the power to stop the federal government from doing what it wants to do. But the reality is, because I just said every state administers its own system, we're likely going to have to see individual lawsuits in individual states to sort
Okay.
of bring that ruling here. The
Okay.
other option and the way that it might go, we all know sort of how things have played out with the higher courts. This is going to be appealed by the administration. It will find its way to the Supreme Court, and if they choose to take it up,
Yeah.
we will have to sort of resolve it there. If it's resolved there, then you will know what it means for Ohio. This is crazy. We shouldn't be doing this in the middle of an election season. We shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing any of this. So I feel your pain when you're saying I don't understand this. I feel your pain when you're saying the system is broken and terrible and all of the horrible things. But unfortunately, it's the pain that we need to motivate us to do something about it.
All right. Awesome. So we'll know eventually, and we just have to live in our confusion for now. But thank you so much. That was very helpful. Okay, now I'm going to go backwards and ask Sandy to, I'm sorry, I have to go backwards and tell us a little bit about what has been, this was the op-ed that Perry and Janine published, and Sandy can tell us a little bit more about it, I hope.
And
Um,
we should highlight that Sandy Tice is an amazing person. She was the head of the Plain Dealer Columbus, the State House Bureau. She also did all sorts of amazing organizing and lobbying. If any of you remember the Dancers for Democracy, I just, I'm just so pleased that Sandy is with us. She is a force of nature, and the right person to tell us about mini nukes and Jobs, Ohio. And with that, Sandy, I'm handing it over to you.
All right, thanks, guys. Much like the Todd Blanche presentation that you just heard, this one involves secrecy and a slush fund. And the guest column that Perry and Janine wrote talked about a pretty serious conflict involving JobsOhio, which is our job creation agency. And when John Kasich was governor, he took our public money and he made all of the things that they do exempt from public records laws. So they spend a lot of our money, and we really have a hard time following the money. But Perry and Janine told us some pretty important things. One, JobsOhio just created what the Dispatch headline called $100 million slush fund. And the slush fund was very narrowly tailored to help AEP. Well, coincidentally, the head of the JobsOhio board is an AEP lobbyist. So while wearing his JobsOhio hat, he created this slush fund that helped one of his lobby clients where he's wearing another hat. And this is very difficult to unearth, but they unearthed it, so I give him some pretty serious credit for it. And much like what Mia was just talking about with the bipartisanship, all kinds of questions about JobsOhio and its secrecy and its ethics inspired bipartisan legislation to reopen the JobsOhio records. And before the bill was introduced, Attorney General Dave Yost, who's a Republican, and John Kulowitz, who is the Democrat who wants to succeed him, both came out separately and said, let's open the records. So, what caught my eye about this is Common Cause did a report several years ago that pointed out that the JobsOhio board chair, a guy named Josh Rubin, the AEP lobbyist, he is on something called the weekly finance call that Governor DeWine has. And this is a call that we did not know about until Common Cause did a report on it, where DeWine gave some pretty high-powered lobbyists a list of upcoming fundraisers, and then they raise money. This is the new dark money. I don't know whether the people on that call tell the governor from whom they raised money, but I suspect they did. And everybody who was on the weekly finance call either lobbied for the bribery scheme, House Bill 6, or they lobbied for sports betting. And here we have all these scandals involving, college students who have inside information, and so they're behaving in a way that would help people who bet one way or the other. Um, there is I got the guest column up here. Um, there was a couple of funny things in there. Well, one of the things that this slush fund would be used for that would help AEP is it would help the development of something called small modular reactors, which are mini nukes. There is not one of those operating in Ohio right now, anywhere. There's one in Russia and there's one in China. Well, the people who are supporting this are saying, well, this, nuclear power is green energy. All right, well, we still don't know how we're going to store the waste, so maybe it's not that green. But while we are spending our resources to help monopoly utilities like AEP get into the nuclear generation space, we are killing wind and solar. That is cheaper. It's available right now. These small modular reactors, if we get them up and running, they would take years to get up and running. And so this is being marketed as a way to deal with what the utilities and their allies are saying is an imminent power shortage. Well, if you can't put these things online for several years, it would do nothing to address any imminent power shortage. So the whole rationale behind him is baloney. And what I thought was pretty funny was there's another reform that came out, again, bipartisan. And you've seen all the stuff about the data centers taking over the state. They use a lot of electricity, and one of the reasons why our electric bills are spiking is because the data centers are very power hungry. Well, the Manufacturers Association and their customers have some of the highest electric bills in the state because they have big buildings and they make things that use a lot of power. And they have come out pretty forcefully and accused the utilities of inflating the amount of power that is going to be needed. And that has sponsored a truth in forecasting bill that once again has a Democrat and a Republican sponsoring it. So when I was a reporter, I was a big fan of sunshine and open government and open records, and I know Common Cause is as well. So I'm hoping that this truth in forecasting law passes and these Jobs Ohio reform legislation passes because we need sunshine. That's the best disinfectant. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Hopefully, I will know what Perry might know. But this is a mess, and this, if we get this truth in forecasting and we open the Jobs Ohio records, maybe we can help keep our electric bills from climbing even higher.
One of the things I've wondered about this, how can I put this? Yes, money was spent on a podcast for a girlfriend of the Ohio State, former Ohio State president.
Yes.
And it garnered attention and an immediate call for transparency and not that it moved the needle. And I guess this feels enormous. And I'm wondering, how do we actually get more attention to this so that we can actually create greater transparency? Because I genuinely fear if we don't, we're just going to just keep being ripped off over and over again, whether it's ratepayers or taxpayers. We get taken advantage of when we don't have the kind of information that we need to understand what's happening.
That's a good question. When I saw their column, I expected it would generate some more press, and it didn't. But and I'm sorry, I don't know who's sponsoring these bills, but if you guys can find out who is sponsoring them, call them, show up at the hearing,
Mhm.
urge the legislative leaders and the sponsors of these bills to pass them. And when I saw the column, I got online, and I know Jobs Ohio records are secret, but I thought I could find their ethics policy. So I got on and I Googled Jobs Ohio and ethics policies, and I found nothing. But I did find an entire Jobs Ohio page bragging about all the ethics awards that they get for transparency. It's like, I don't know who these people are and who's blowing smoke up there, you know what's, but they are not transparent, and they have not been for a very long time. And when I was at the plane dealer, it was pretty weird because they did front page editorials about another secret Jobs Ohio scandal. And Mark Kwame was Kasich's guy who he initially put in charge of Jobs Ohio. And Ohio State, against the wishes of the Ohio State investment team, gave a Mark Kwame new investment firm, Drive Capital, $50 million, again, of public money. And the plain dealer found out about it, wrote about it, was ignored by Ohio State, was ignored by Jobs Ohio. And so they started just beating him up day after day after day, and eventually learned that the internal investment people thought it was a bad idea. And so once again, we have the very rich and powerful at the front of the line for our money.
That's right.
And, could Ohio State have used that money for student scholarships or some of the other issues that they face at, it's a land grant college.
Yeah. They throw these 50 million here, 50 million there.
Yeah.
At some point, it's real money.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then they win transparency awards.
it's crazy.
We should call those awards people and say, really, are you aware of what's going on in Ohio?
It's the
Maybe.
FIFA Peace Prize.
That's right.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for jumping in. Um, that you did an amazing job considering you were not queued up. That's awesome. We really are glad you were here and appreciate it so much. And now I'm going to move on because I'm looking at the clock and we're getting down towards 9:30. So um, if that's all right, I will move ahead. And we will send out this column in our follow-up, and also happy to answer questions if people have questions. We will make sure to answer them. So I wanted to let you know how there's a lot of national actions that have been happening over the past couple of years, whether that's No Kings or Hands Off or those kinds of things. And last year we had the Good Trouble in July, which is the anniversary of Congressman John Lewis's birthday. And this year it's a whole weekend, not just the 17th, but the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And again, this is national action, so they're encouraging. This is a national coalition of many, many groups, including Common Cause and all of your good government groups and democracy and civil rights and um, groups coming together. And the weekend is broken into 3 days. Friday is Teach, so that's like webinars and educational meetings. Saturday is Reach. So that's canvassing and outreach in neighborhoods. And Sunday is Preach. So it's your faith meetings and gatherings. And Common Cause is going to be participating in all of these. And we hope that you and your local groups also do. And I'm sure that, you know, those of you who are in have been involved with these kinds of things have gotten some information about this or will soon. Our first event is on the Friday. It's the Teach, and we're going to do a very cool webinar that's generally about making sure that you know how to check your registration and to check your friends and your family's registrations. You know the rules about mail voting. You know how to register other people. You know about our election protection program and you know how to sign up. And you know the kinds of actions that you can take to make sure not just that your friends are registered, but they really know the details and that they can successfully, cast their ballot and have it be counted, and to protect democracy in Ohio. So we're going to cover all of that in 1 hour starting at noon on Friday, July 17, and we encourage you to join us. And if you are in a group and you want your group to come and join us and kind of be a co-host, we would love to hear from you as well. And finally, Kelly, Catherine, somebody want to run through all of the upcoming events? We have a ridiculous amount of upcoming events.
There
So
are
we do.
so
I did want to highlight that you all will get a follow-up, which will include the slides, the recording. Realize that this meeting we covered a ton of different topics, so it can be fun to go back and kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive. So we'll send out, those that follow-up information. I did want to, highlight the event on Monday. This is focused on flock cameras and surveillance and how the data is used. We'll have people from different locations around the state. Mia's organizing this to do a fishbowl so that essentially what'll happen is different people will be from all over and pop in and pop out. So it'll be more discussion oriented. So I highly encourage that you participate in that on Monday. Oh, and then the democracy huddle is going to be so much fun. Many of you will remember Josh Raltenberg when he was a State House reporter. Well, he and Rory Riley Topping put together a book called Draw the Line in Ohio: How One State's Fight for Fair Maps Explains Gerrymandering in America. And one of the things that is my favorite part about it is it highlights all of the hard work that we have all done to get fair maps and just the real struggle. And of course, when we get to July 10, we have a voter rights coalition meeting. So if you're like, I really want to get much more actively involved in voter registration, that is the call for you. Our next Coffee with Common Cause is on the 16th. I hope that we can see you there. And then we have a series that we've been doing with the Ohio Fair Courts Alliance, looking at the courts and the environment, including state agencies like the PUCO. So there's one in September, one in August, and then don't forget that
July.
election protection summit that Dylan talked about.
Yeah, so the July, one in July, one in August on so many things. So please choose a few and join us, and you will get a follow-up that lists all of these things.
And please share with others. We really appreciate it. Well, any final questions, comments before we bid you all adieu? Well, let's go off and have a really good morning. I just wanted to say thank you for all you're doing. Kelly was highlighting that the 4th of July is just around the corner. Please enjoy, our Independence Day and use that time to push back on authoritarianism and to invite more participation, more voting. Mia, any final words?
No, just thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Thanks
See you
again.
soon.